We want to talk today, coming to you from Faith Assembly of God, P.O. Box 331, Smiths Grove, Kentucky, 42171. And I am Wade Martin Hughes. I pastored at the church here 35 years. Mr. Larry Carter is the director. He does it all. I just sat and try my best to look pretty there. But we have a thought that we want to share. And we want to talk about, will you loan your faith? Will you loan your faith? I'll tell you what's going on in the world today. Honestly, boils down to not Republican and not Democrat. It boils down to good versus evil. That's the bottom line of all that we do. It's good versus evil. It's God versus the devil. And we believe that we're going to see a victory. Here at this church, we've been under a siege of a battle. And I don't want to talk about the cancer. I want to talk about Jesus. And I want us to go to Philippians, the 3rd chapter, verse 14. I press towards the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. I press towards the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. As a little child, I accepted Jesus Christ. We're not perfect, but we are forgiven. And we find out that there's two ways that we can go in church. We can live in our comfort zone, or we can live in our calling. I believe God calls every individual. I believe God calls them. I believe there's a plan and a purpose greater than what we can see. And I don't want to live in the comfort zone. Yesterday, when everything was finished and Linda was on the computer and everything, I came to church and I turned on the air conditioning for today. And I could have went home and watched a football game of the team that I probably love and follow. Or I could stay here at church and pray. And Chewy came to church with me to pray. He just gets right up against me at prayer time. And we were sitting on the love seat back there praying. And I thought, I'm going to run home and get to watch this football game. And then something in my heart said, no, you pray. On Saturday, everybody knows I pray for churches and pastors. And so, am I going to go in my comfort zone, or am I going to go in my calling? Am I going to press towards the mark of the high calling? Psalms 121 says, and listen, I'm not complaining, but my pain has been crushing. I never knew pain could be like it is. I never knew it. It seems to be there's no relief for it. How do you spell relief? R-O-L-A-I-D-S. Rolaids. No, they don't help. When hurt is trying to kill you. And I'm talking to some of you that I know have been carrying a very, very heavy load. not you, but for somebody else. And if we go by what we see, we're hopeless and helpless. But I want to let you know, God wants you to share your faith. My mom taught us that we couldn't, if we had candy and we had people there, we couldn't eat that candy unless we had enough for everybody. That was our rule at our house. If you don't have enough for everybody, you just leave it put up. I'm afraid that some of us are not sharing our faith. We're in a closet, and we're not, when the pain's crushing, when life is full of disappointments. The older I get, the more I understand disappointment. Several times, I'd get down at my dad's feet, and I'd say, Dad, would you pray for me? Dad, would you bless me? And I would ask him, and he'd lay his hands on me and pray for me. He'd be in his lazy boy recliner or whatever it was. There is a plan of God that this disappointment, this hurt, this pain is not to destroy you, but it's to make you stronger. And Psalms 121:1, I will lift up my eyes unto the hills, from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord, which made the heavens and earth. Linda and I, when we was at Middlesboro, Kentucky, there was a little old lady lived in a housing project up the hill. I don't remember her name often. And Linda and I would get her and take her for a ride. And we would take her to the doctor's office. Several times we took her to the hospital. And when she left her house, she would lock the door. She'd walk towards the road, and she'd turn around and look back at her house. And one day I asked her, why are you doing that? She said, because I may never walk back in that door. I may never walk back in that door. She learned to appreciate simple little things and share them with other people. I'd like us to think about abiding in our calling, not your comfort zone. There's somebody that needs you, and you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone to do that. What does borrow mean? It should be real easy for you to define borrow, since it's on the wall beside my shoulder. Borrow means to take and use something that belongs to somebody else. Remember the story of the preacher? They was building on, adding on, remodeling where the students lived, and he borrowed an axe. Remember the story? And when he borrowed the axe, he was cutting down trees for the wood, and the head of the axe came off and went into the river. The river was flooded at that time, and he calls the preacher, and he says, Preacher, that's a borrowed axe. It's not mine. I don't have money to replace it. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the preacher took a stick and threw it in the river, and if you believe the Bible, the axe head swam. It didn't float, it swam. I think it was doing the backstroke, and if it's where I could do it, I'd do the backstroke. God has provisions that we can borrow something. And then we look at the word loan. Loan means temporary use, something that's lent, a thing that is borrowed. Turn with me to Acts 8, verse 28. What would we do if we didn't have God? How would we get the axe head out of the river if it wasn't a divine provision? I'm telling you today, we need to get our axe heads back. We need to get the sharp edge back. Stanley is so good at sharpening knives. One day he asked me to see my pocket knife, and I got it out, and he sharpened that knife where it was so sharp. I cut myself so deep 2 or 3 times. I need a dull knife to clean my fingernails. But we need the sharpness to come back to the church. I know. Do you know? What's the first thing you know? Oh, Jed's a millionaire. Ken folks say, Jed, move away from there. Said California. The first thing we should know is that our God is watching over us and He's taking care of us. He's making a way for us. And we know that all things work together for the good of them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose. So this disappointment, this pain, this whatever it is that we're facing, God has a plan, and He will bring good out of bad. Do you believe that? I believe that. I remember one time as I was in Prestonsburg, and I walked over the old bridge, and I was crying out to God. And I walked across the bridge and down through the neighborhood, and I thought, people in the houses are going to hear you out here. And I thought, I don't care. But I remember, will you forgive me? Say yes. I remember I shook my fist towards heaven, and I said, there is no way on earth that you can make good come out of this situation. And I cried, and it started raining. It started pouring the rain. I was probably 1.5 miles from the house. I turned around and walked back. And again, my whole thought was, God, there's no way good could come out of this. I want to tell you, 45 years later, good came out of it. You hear me? Disappointments, yes. Pain, yes. Misunderstanding, yes. Trials and hardships, yes. But my God knows how to deliver. And it says we know. I forget it sometimes. When the pain is crushing. When the little spot on my back where they worked on it. I said, I don't think I can stand another one of those tests. I don't think I can stand it. But I want to tell you with great confidence, I know in whom I believe, and I am persuaded that He is able to keep that I commit to Him unto that day. And some of you need to quit carrying the burden. Some of you need to lay it down and trust God. I'll tell you, I don't know if it'll come today or if it'll come tomorrow, but I want to tell you with great assurance that my God reigns, that greater is He in me than he that is in the world. I want to tell you that though we be in trials tonight, joy comes in the morning. It comes in the morning. I've learned through extreme pain, you can't give up. Don't give up. Was it Tammy Faye that said, don't give up on the brink of a miracle? I've learned that. I've learned that I've got to trust God. You hear me? I've learned that you are going to have to trust God. It's easy to trust God in the good times, but faith trusts God in the bad times. It works. And I want to tell you, it works in His time. That's what some of us don't get. We don't get it's His time. We think He should be like Santa Claus and drop all the presents down the chimney. And I want to tell you, it doesn't work that way. Turn with me to Isaiah 55. Larry used these two verses in Sunday school. It says in Isaiah 55:8. I'm going to bring it to you in the New Living Translation. My thoughts are nothing like God's thoughts, says the Lord. And my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. You hear me? He's exceedingly abundantly more than what we think or ask. It goes on to say, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. For just as heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways. And my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. We need to learn not to just have faith for us and us for and no more. We've been in a drought. You hear me? Here, we've been in a drought. Marty mowed the grass here at church yesterday and at my house. And when I saw him at Speedway filling up my lawnmower, when I saw him there, he was just covered with dust. Just covered with dust. From stirring it up with the lawnmower. I want to tell you, the end of the drought is coming. And I hope you know, I'm talking spiritually. The drought can't last forever. It can't last forever. We're not hopeless and we're not helpless. We lived in a $300,000 home in Prestonsburg for free. It had 2 front rooms, 2 kitchens. It had 6 bedrooms and all of that. And we lived in this fancy house, and we drove a Pinto station wagon. Stanley should remember that Pinto. And Marty said one day, they're going to think we're rich living in this house. The little old lady let us live there for free while she was in Florida. So, he said, people's going to think we're rich. And I said, no, Marty, not driving a Pinto. They're not going to believe that. I believe that God's calling us to a higher ground, and God's asking and seeking us. Go with me to 2 Kings, the 4th chapter. 2 Kings, the 4th chapter. I want to talk about empty things. There's this lady, and she's in big trouble. They're coming to take her sons and put them on the auction block and sell them as slaves. Can you imagine, John, somebody saying, I'm coming and taking your daughters and I'm going to sell them as slaves? And here this mom is, everything in her house is empty. And God says, I want you to do something more than your pots being empty. I want you to fill up every pot that you can get. Empty pots. Preacher, we're desperate. We're desperate. There's no answer in sight. Nothing I can do can take away this cancer. Nothing you can do. Nothing all of us together can do. We can't do it. But I want to tell you, it can be done. When we touch God's heart, it says 2 Kings 4 verse 3, then the preacher says, I know it says he, but yeah. The preacher says, borrow thee vessels abroad of all your neighbors, even empty vessels. Borrow not a few. Okay, you ready? When we obey God, what good's an empty pot going to help my situation and save my sons? What's going to keep us from starving to death? Eating donkey's head. Going for a donkey's head by our standards today would have cost, in this drought, would have cost $125 for a donkey's head. And I want to tell you, girls, you can have the eyeballs and the ears. I don't want them. It's really bad. How bad is it? They're buying a pint of pigeon manure. How do you cook pigeon manure? You put it in the microwave? Empty. Everything's empty. But God has a plan for those of us that can't see an answer. I can't see the healing of feet. I can't see the healing of cancer. And honey, I want you to know, God doesn't have to explain himself to you. You say, God, I don't understand. Why, God? Why, God? Why, God? Through all of this test that Linda and I have been through, I want to tell you, I don't understand why. I got a cut from halfway down my arm to my neck. I don't know why, except it gave me the opportunity. There was a man, there was no rooms open. The story of Jesus getting born, there was no rooms. And we spent 3 days in recovery. And I thought, God, I don't understand this. Only one person could come back. Nina was there, and Linda was there. And here we are. And I don't understand. And they bring a man in the room next to me that a 7,000-pound rock sat on his foot. You know what a 7,000-pound rock will do to your foot? It'll take it off. It took, in addition to half of his foot, it took some of his fingers. And I told Linda, I've got to pray for him. I've got to pray for him. Part of what I've gone through is it's given me doors that I wouldn't. His name was Tony. HEPA laws, I don't know his last name. But I finally got up and I stood at the doorway for a minute, and the nurse saw us going in there, and she sort of put herself between us. You can't go visiting from one bay to the next bay. I said, I'm a preacher and I'm going to pray for him. And you should have seen how she got out of the way. And I went in there, and I told him, I'm a preacher. I love Jesus. And I just want to pray for you. And I laid my hands on that man and prayed for him. That opportunity would not have happened had I not been in this dark valley that I'm in. And so here it tells her, go borrow. And then in verse 4, and when thou art come in, shut the door. Shut the door. You know why to shut the door? I'm sure there's some long noses, big mouths that would have killed the miracle. You go in, the room with all the empty pots. You go in there and shut the door. And your sons. And thou shalt pour out into those empty vessels. You're going to pour them out, and you set it aside when it gets full. And she went to him. She shut the door. Her and her sons, and they brought in the vessels to her. She poured, and a miracle happened. There's only a little bit of oil in her vessel, and she fills up a big pot, and she holds it up and says, "Be doggone, it's still just..." And she filled up the whole neighborhood's pots. Now, what good's that going to do? I'll tell you what it does. It brings a miracle. You go sell. And so she went around the neighborhood. And when they come to take her sons, she had the money. She had the money to pay for it. I want you to know it takes an empty pot to release a miracle. If all the pots had already been full, the miracle is when an empty, hurting vessel comes to the throne. And at verse 7, she came and told the man of God. And he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debt and live with your children." Thank God. Let me tell you, when you say I can't, you can't, we can't, disabled, pain, all the negative stuff that's coming up, John, the 5th chapter, verse 3. And these lay a great multitude of impotent folk. All around it was sick people. Nobody was well. And Jesus comes in. There's blind people there. There's heart. There's withered. They're waiting for the move of the water. For an angel came down in a certain season to the pool, and when the water was troubled, the first person to get in the water was healed. And there's a man that's laid there 38 years. Can you imagine 38 years of chronic illness? And Jesus comes by, and Jesus says, "What do you want?" What do you want? A Corvette? Wouldn't it be nice to drive to school in a Corvette? He said, "I've been here 38 years. I'm trapped here." He don't even try to get up anymore. He's destitute. There's no way anything can happen. 38 years. And soon to be 39 and 40 years. I believe he laid there so long, and everybody around him was sick. You know what I believe? I believe they all talk negative. We're stuck here. I've been here 18 years. I've been here 28 years. I've been here 38 years. There's no way until Jesus comes by. And Jesus says the dumbest thing. You know what Jesus said to the man that couldn't get up for 38 years? Jesus said, "Get up. Pick up your mat and walk." That's dumb to tell a man that's laid 38 years. Right? Come on. That's dumb. That's absolutely stupid. What do you mean, Jesus? You know what he did? He jumped up. I believe that God can come by and trouble the waters. I believe we can loan our faith. I believe we can do that. Look what John 5 verse 6 says. And when Jesus saw him lie, he knew that he'd been there a long time. And he said, wilt thou be made whole? The question I'd like us to make in this place, some of us are bound by habits that's not good. Did you know the number one thing that goes on in your house is sleep? And second to that is watching television. Wow. Will you be made whole? Say it. No, I just want to stay here. I'm so comfortable here. Everybody knows where I'm at. Can you imagine when he jumped up and rolled up his bed? I believe the first place he went was to his mama's house. Mama, fix me some meatloaf. I want some meatloaf and mashed potatoes, Mom. How about some banana pudding to go with that? I'm going to tell you that it's time we realize and focus. There's somebody out there that needs you. They need you. You hear me? They need you to share your faith with them. And how can we share our faith when we're too suffering? That's one thing I've learned through all of this. There's people a lot worse off than I am. I see that little child that's all deformed and the parents are pushing it in the buggy. There's somebody needs you to share your faith. You hear me? You hear me? You hear me? God can. I can't. You can't. We can't. But there is an answer. There is a God. I was in chemistry class in college. The final test, there was 4 things that they gave us in bottles, and we had to identify it. You all know the story. We had to identify what was in each of those bottles, and to get an A, you had to do all 4 of them. My first one was copper sulfate. I identified it. And then my last one, I ran every test. No, nothing came. Nothing. And the time was almost out. I knocked the bottle over by accident, and I put the stuff back in the jar, and I went like this. That's salt. That's sodium chloride. That's NaCl. And when I wrote it down and I turned it to the teacher, he called me Hughes. He said, Hughes, nobody has ever figured out salt. It doesn't fit in any test. Did you know salt's 2 poisons put together? And together they become necessary for life. And he said, how did you figure it out? I said, the taste test. He said, did you know there's sulfuric acid? Do you know how dangerous that was? I said, I didn't do it on purpose. It was an accident. But give me my A. I'm telling you, when I was in school, God help me. God help me. When I taught school, God help me when I started teaching school. You haven't lived till you had 44 kids in one room all day long. No break, no anything. The first year, second year. Look what happens. Look, Mark 2, verse 1. Mark 2, verse 1. There's some people shared their faith. There was 4 men carrying somebody that had palsy. They couldn't walk. It's terrible. What are we going to do? We're going to carry him to see Jesus. What happens? Yoo-hoo! What happens when they get to the house? Jesus, the answer, is in the house. Jesus is in the house. But I'm so sorry to tell you, you can't get in. You hear me? You might as well carry that sucker back home. I believe the first seatbelt ever invented was when they put it around that man and tied him and pulled him up the wall. And can you imagine them saying, "Oh, you're going to kill me! You're going to kill me!" No, we're not going to kill you. We're going to get you to Jesus. He couldn't get his miracle by himself. He had to have people to carry him. Some of us are facing people that's so depressed and so whatever. I want to tell you, I don't care what happens. I'm going to my grave with joy. I still got my joy. And I still got some friends that'll lift me up and take me. And we get on top of the house, and then what? We're still hopeless. And somebody said, "No, we're not." And they started stomping on the roof of that house. And can you imagine the guy that owns the house? Look up there and see all that dust coming down and see all of that. I want you to note something. I want you to note that they broke it up and they let him down, Mark 2, 3, and 4. But I want you to note verse 5. Jesus what? He saw their faith. What's faith look like? I picked up a hitchhiker in Corbin, Kentucky, on 25 going through Pineville and that way. I picked up a hitchhiker, and I was witness to him. He said, I don't believe in God because I can't see him. I said, is that right? I said, you only believe what you see? He said, yeah, I only believe what I see. I said, do you know love? Yeah. Can you see it? He said, yeah. What's it look like? You can't see love. You can feel love, but you can't see it. And I said, can you see the power on the electric line up there? No, sir, I can't see the electric. It's coded. We've got lines that's not coded. You can't see electricity. But you can put your fingers in the plug-in and you can feel it. I believe God's asking us to reach out to other people, even when we're in a mess. Even when we're in a mess. I was coming to from the major surgery. I discerned something. Black nurse, RN, was taking care of me. And I talked to her, and I said, honey, would you mind? I laid my hand, she had her hand on the rail so I wouldn't fall out of the bed. Would you mind if I pray for you? I believe it's time that we start sharing our faith. And I prayed and I said, God, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. But I hit pay dirt when I looked and saw big tears running down her face. I want you to know, God wants you to share your faith. I think that's neat, Stanley, that in the midst of everything, you get up and come and anoint me and pray for me. I think that's neat. I think it's neat, Nina, that you joined in that. That's what I'm talking about. Bringing other people. And let me close with a story about a guy named Andrew. Andrew was a brother to Peter. Peter got all the limelight. Everybody knew Peter. Everybody knew he'd shoot his mouth off. Everybody knew, besides Jesus, he's the only one that ever walked on water. Peter. Peter was the big shot. I call him a hoo-hoo. He was a hoo-hoo. But Andrew did something. He brought other people to Jesus. There was these foreigners come and they said, we want to see Jesus. Sir, can we see Jesus? You know who brought him to Jesus? Peter? No. Andrew. Andrew, there's no book of Andrew. He was never important, but he made a difference. He brought people to Jesus. Do you remember when he says, Jesus says everybody's hungry? 5,000 men's hungry? And that's not counting the women. That's not counting the kids. They're hungry. And Andrew lifts up a brown paper bag, maybe, with some biscuits and some little fish in it. He had the answer, but he kills the answer. He said, what are they among so many? You hear me? He had the answer, but he killed the answer. He killed the answer. You hear me and hear me right now. You've got the answer. It's in your hand. It might even be your hands. Have you ever said, what are they among so many? God, this is a big thing. Can I tell you what I believe? And you not laugh at me? I believe someday they're going to say, preacher, you're cancer free. I believe that. I believe that. How the pain goes from here to here, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. How am I going to play a guitar with no shoulder and no arm? I'm not going to face that. I'm not going to face that. I want to tell you in the name of Jesus Christ that you have the answer. It's already on you. You say, I'm only, how old, Rebecca? 15? I'm only 15. Hey, you got the answer. Debbie's got the answer in that purse. She's got everything in that purse. My mom always had everything in her purse. I want to tell you today, we've got to quit saying, what are they among so many? I've got the answer. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes, you do. You got the answer, Stanley. You got the answer. You got the answer. God has the answer. What are they among so many? Go to Mark 2, verse 5. You got it? Mark 2, verse 5. When Jesus saw their faith. Again, how do you see faith? What's it look like? You can't see it. You can't feel it. Wait just a second. Yes, you can feel it. But you're going to go through seasons that you don't feel it. You hear me, Joyce? You're going to go through some battles and say, God, where are you? Where are you? And I say, just look over your shoulder. And I'm asking you today, in the name of Jesus Christ, to realize God wants you to share your faith. Mark 2:11. Mark 2:11. I say unto you, arise, take up your bed, and go your way to your house. It's time to come home. You hear me? It's time to come home. It's time to launch your faith. You hear me? It's time. It's time. What's your problem? Say I don't have any? No. You got a problem. Are you going to say, I've got the answer? And then say, no, I don't have the answer. I want to tell you, his negativity did not stop the miracle. You hear me? It didn't stop the miracle. Jesus said, bring it over here. And what does Jesus do? He prays over it. He blesses it. And then he says, hand it out. How many people's going to get a biscuit? 4 or 5? How many's going to get fish? Is it Captain D's or Long John Silver's? I don't know. But I want you to know, everybody ate till they was full, and then there's baskets left over. I want to tell you, in the name of Jesus Christ, let's share our faith. You don't know. The preacher might be down. Al Young used to, I'd come in, our answering machine would be blinking, and it was Al Young. Say, I don't have anything special to tell you. I just want to tell you I love you. And he'd hang up. I want you to know your little note, your little text, I said the other night when Glasgow was here, they'll be here tonight, and next week we'll be there. Linda probably need to talk to you about what we need to take. But I'm telling you, they have been a shot in our arm in this church. Sunday night, this side is absolutely full. They've encouraged me. They've laid hands on me and prayed. Some of you all don't want to lay your hands on somebody. You might be the one that brings the miracle. And I told their pastor, I said, Ricky, you've been a big shot in our arm. And Ricky said, no, it's the other way around. Your church has encouraged our church. Well, let me do 2 closings here, okay? We are Faith Assembly of God, P.O. Box 331, Smiths Grove, Kentucky, 42171. We are reachable via email at kyfingers@AOL. Thank you for watching. We ask you to pass it on to somebody else. And if you're lost and a backslider, we want you to share our faith. And may God richly bless you.